Hello, Tashdale, and welcome everybody to our 18th session of our weekly virtual teachings by Venerable Geshe Lhakdor. And once again, we are truly very fortunate that we could make it and we could be here to listen to Geshe-la. And Geshe-la, thank you so much for blessing us with your presence and with your insights. Thank you so much. And please, Geshe-la, start
Okay, sure.
sharing your insights with us and enlightening us. Thank you.
Welcome, everybody. So today's chapter is chapter 17, which is about not to give up one's promise or commitment, and what is perfect religious system. So with regard to making commitment and promise, it is said that the sublime beings do not make many promises and commitments. And once they make a commitment or make a promise, they will not break that promise even if they die. Just like carving on a stone, even if the stone breaks, the carving will still be there. So therefore, you must have noticed that when the Tibetan Buddhist teachers, whenever they compose the text, right in the beginning, there is a verse which is titled as Promise to Compose the Text. So right in the beginning, when they make this commitment or promise to compose the text, that means they are going to complete it. Not like many of us. We are very good in starting something and leaving everything unfinished. So therefore, it is best not to start anything if you think you can't do. It's not only Dharma practice, whatever work it is, it may be good also. Even if it is good, if you don't have the capacity to, or the time to complete it, then you should not take it. So as I said, it's not only Dharma practice in our day-to-day life. I'm sure most of you who are attending this teaching are senior people. So I'm sure you know this. And I've known this in my life very, very well. And especially these days, there is the lure of money, saying that if you could do this within such and such period of time, you will get such and such sum of money. And then they give you what they call as a deadline. So with the temptation for money, if you try to meet the deadline, even if you don't really have the capacity or the time to do it, then before you meet the deadline, you may be almost dead. So therefore, I have at least on my part, as much as possible, not to try to meet any deadline. It may have its advantages sometimes because it will make you finish certain things. So there are different people having different experiences, but at least I'm sharing you my experience. When you do something, it should be done by fully knowing the impact and the benefit of that work. If there are like 10, 20 different things that you can do, you should do one which you think many people can't do and which has the capacity to benefit many, many people. For example, instead of becoming as a translator or a Buddhist student, if I do cleaning or brooming the surroundings of library, I can easily do that also. But then that many people can do. What I'm doing, not many people probably can do. So therefore, it is better to do that which not many people can do and which also has a lot of benefit to other people without consideration for name and fame and money and things like that. Because anything that you do with this motivation to help others, with full commitment, not keeping in mind the lure of money and the fame and name and so forth, then you will really enjoy it, enjoy doing it. And there will be full satisfaction when you have completed it. Just today we did a book launching, and there is a young Tibetan who has been writing a very extensive Tibetan history, which took him over 8 years. And it is like 5 big volume, so which he completed through his own initiative. And we launched it, published by library, and we launched it today. So I could easily see the joy that he is having because it was pure kind of commitment for the work, not for name, fame, and things like that. So that's important. So therefore, don't make commitment easily. If you make a commitment, then you should complete it, finish it. I have in my life met many people who will readily say, I will do this, I'll do that, I'll write back to you, this, and then nothing. Especially many people come to do interview with me. Then I tell them, okay, after you finish the interview, at least send me a copy. Oh, yes, Geshe, sure. Hardly any of them sent that to me later on. I mean, I don't feel any loss for that because what I've told them, I know. but that, and I'm not criticizing anybody. It's a human way of doing things, out of sight, out of mind. That's a human kind of weakness or something, you see. So it's important to remember the good things and develop right motivation and complete it. In Tibetan, we have a saying, "Yak share tsasawa na himachi." That means don't when it comes to study or doing something, don't do it like a blind yak eating the grass. When a blind yak eats the grass, he will not do it systematically, because he's blind, He can just move his mouth in every direction and try to get a little bit of tuft of grass here and there. so, so it should not be like that. So therefore, right at the beginning, in this chapter, Atisha and Dumdumba, they are really advising us to not to give up your commitment. Now, commitment, there are 100,000 commitments. In the context of a spiritual practitioner, we have made so many commitments. Commitment of becoming a monk and commitment to observe all the vows, and then for everybody, lay people, everybody, we have received how many Kala Chakra. During each Kala Chakra, the Lama gives a commitment. We have, by closing our eyes, said, yes, Guru, great Lama, I'll do it. You repeated this 3 times. Similarly, we have received the Bodhisattva vow many times. We took refuge many times. So all this, teachings have commitments. And in fact, the whole Buddhist practice, when you say you are going to practice, you are making a commitment. But we are not able to do. So there is the problem. There's the problem. So therefore, making a promise is not easy. And in English, they say promise breakers are bad, worse than dog or something like that. Huh? Anyway, that may be true, not may be true, but we should make attempt. Then this chapter also summarizes the perfect religious practice or system. So here in this chapter, he briefly mentions when you talk about the whole system of the Buddhist practice, then it starts by taking refuge to Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. I'm not going to explain this in detail because I'm sure you all know that. And human beings have this tendency to take refuge in someone else when you are unable to do something by yourself. That's nothing abnormal. It's just human nature. So based on that human nature, this Buddhist teaching, in the Buddhist teaching also we have this process of taking refuge to Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. So we take refuge to somebody when we have a problem. If it is raining, we take refuge in umbrella. If you're hungry at 1 or 12 o'clock, you take refuge in your lunch box or lunch or whatever. Right? So similarly here, when we say, I take refuge to Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, you are saying you are having a problem. So you need to, when you take refuge to Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, you need to know clearly who these 3 objects of refuge are. Clearly, as I am saying, clearly. Who is Buddha? Who is Dharma? Who is Sangha? Why should I take refuge in them? What is my problem? So here in this case, you are not taking refuge to Buddha, Dharma, Sangha because of shortage of money, or you want to get more name and fame, or you want to buy a 5-story building. Not for that. You are taking refuge to Buddha, Dharma, Sangha because you fear suffering, and you want to eliminate the negative emotions. And the process of removing the negative emotions and the process of achieving long-lasting peace and happiness is taught by the Buddha. And it is Dharma that which contains all these subjects. And it is the Sangha by whose example, by whose friendship, you will be encouraged to move forward in the spiritual practice. So therefore, we need to take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Just as a person, when he or she is terribly sick and bedridden, then he or she has to take refuge to the doctor, a good doctor, okay, good doctor, and then good medicine, and then a good helper, nurse, or your parents or relatives, whoever, somebody to help you, because you are bedridden, you're not only sick but terribly sick. So when you're terribly sick, you're unable to take your food, you're unable to wash your clothes and things like that. So there you need three. When you're physically very, very sick, you need three. The doctor, the nurse, and the helper. So similarly, from a larger perspective, we are all mentally sick with anger, sick with jealousy, sick with all kinds of negative emotions, right? So in this case, therefore, similar to the doctor, the nurse, and the helper, so when we are mentally sick also, we need Buddha, who is like a doctor, and then his teaching, which is like a medicine, and the Sangha, who is like the helper. So you need three. So it makes perfect sense. So in order to wholeheartedly, take refuge to Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, you need to have this sense of fear, which unfortunately not many of us have. Fear of what? Fear of samsara, fear of cycle existence, right? Not everything is right. Once we are born in this cycle of existence, we get all kind of problems, be it pandemic, be it family fight, be it flood, be it earthquake, be it 100,000 problems will crop up on a daily basis. And then if you look at the fact of your life itself, you are born crying. Although we say happy birthday, but suffering birthday is there, starts from suffering birthday, then aging is sickness, and then death, and between so many other problems. Those people who you want to meet, you are not able to meet, they are not responding. Those people who you don't want to meet, they seem to be standing at the corner and waiting for you. So we have many problems, right? So once you realize, especially when you develop a larger perspective, why I'm having all these problems. You're having all this problem because something is basically wrong. And what is wrong is this very psychophysical aggregate that you have, which is conditioned by negative emotions and contaminated actions, contaminated karma, right? So therefore you are susceptible to all kinds of problems and difficulties. So therefore now, having obtained this precious human life, you need to come with a way to remove that contaminated action, which is also rooted in negative emotion, and especially the three poisons. So for that, you need to really have this fear of fear caused by these negative emotions. These negative emotions are the worst kind of pandemic. Nobody has invented any injection or to do away anger, or to do away jealousy. COVID-19 may be very dangerous, huh? But still we are coming up with the vaccine, and there are some strategies now. Hopefully it will gradually lessen and come to an end. But is there a vaccine injection to remove your anger, or rather the anger of the humanity, the jealousy of the humanity, right? This is something continuously we observe in different parts of the world, killing each other, exploiting each other, fooling each other unnecessarily. So much of the problem short-sightedness, because of which you are unhappy, others are unhappy, you see. How can you be happy when you keep on bullying others, exploiting each others, How can you be happy? Whether other people retaliate or not, you are mentally disturbed. How can you be happy? Right? But you are doing this because you are intoxicated. Just as the person who is drunk can do anything. Not because that person wants to do it, but that person is under the influence of their liquor, drunk. No sense of discrimination between what is right, what is wrong, what is good for oneself, what is good for others. So similarly, we are all addicted, intoxicated by these negative emotions with which we are habituated for so many lives. So many lives. So therefore, to uproot these negative emotions in which we are so strongly entrenched and habituated, that will not go out just by seeking the blessing of a Lama or receiving initiation or reciting few mantras. No, you have to completely uncondition that conditioning by the negative emotions. You have to form a new habit, which is called meditation. Your meditation was very strong with the negative emotions, therefore anger is ready to erupt. All kind of negative emotions, ready to erupt. But with the positive emotions, it's not so easy. I know many people, it may be true in my case also, as and when we start reading a Buddhist text, we feel sleepy immediately. So if you have problem sleeping, best thing is to read Buddhist text. And not to take any medicine, but read a Buddhist text, maybe on Shunyata, right? Your eyelids will immediately become heavy and you will fall asleep, But if it is something else, going for an entertainment and things like that, your eye will also become bigger, so alert and so sharp, You can, without even closing your eye, sit and watch that so-called gripping movie for 3 hours continuously, without even moving, you see. For Dharma practice, meditation, even sitting for 10 minutes is a task, you see. So this clearly shows in which area we are habituated. So therefore, we need to know this clearly. If we really want that long-lasting happiness and peace, if you really think it is possible, the Buddhist teaching says it is possible, it looks like it is possible, right? Then unless we make some attempt, this short-lived attempt that we are making is better than nothing, but it will not really help us uproot the negative emotions. And so long as you don't uproot the negative emotions by lock, stock, and barrel, as we say, then again the influence of these negative emotions will be there, and again you will lead a life influenced by this intoxication, right? Then you will again be just like a person who is intoxicated, will just grow in the darkness, So similarly, we'll keep on groping. That's what we are doing. We are groping in the darkness in this cycle of existence and not finding anything, Just like a blind person groping in the darkness, right? So when you're blind, you grope in the darkness, and there's very likelihood that you will fall and you will get hurt. So that is what we are experiencing in the cycle of existence because of the blindness of ignorance, right? So therefore, in order to uproot these negative emotions, we should follow the advice and teaching of the Buddha and rely upon spiritual masters or Sangha who are good examples. We are ordinary people. We are very ordinary people. So therefore, the people with whom you associate is also very important. Very important, because if you associate with somebody who is a wayward, drinker or, gambler or something like that, you will easily pick up that habit. It's very easy to get addicted, right? Like, for example, even if you're addicted in something that may be not so destructive, but it will at least ruin your time, right? So like that. On the other hand, if you get more associated with people, good Dharma practitioners or good people, you will also pick up their habit. In their very presence, you will find that calmness and peace, and you will also talk about those topics. I remember very well once I was staying in a place when I was working in Delhi. Then we had few people, having lunch, dinner together. Then during the lunch and dinner time, I was the, black crow. The subject they were talking I was not interested. So I hardly have anything to discuss with them. So I'm not saying that I have the best subject and they don't have that. I'm not saying that, but simply our interest is different, you see, right? So therefore it is important to rely upon spiritual teachers and spiritual friends and do one's practice. And then secondly, in this chapter, it speaks about the importance of observing morality. As Nagarjuna has clearly said, that just as uh, the moving and the unmoving, the moving means sentient beings, and unmoving trees and houses and so forth, has to depend upon the ground. Without the ground, nothing can stand. So similarly, for developing any virtuous practices, the ground, like the foundation or basis, is morality. If morality is not there, you can't meditate. Impossible to develop one point in meditation. Impossible to develop wisdom analyzing emptiness or any other virtuous practices. So morality here, basically, in Hindi, it is called Shila. Shila, Samadhi, Praja. Shila. Shil is similar to this other Hindi word which is called Shitalta. So Shil means cool, coolness. So meaning that when you observe morality, which basically, as I explained earlier, morality, observing morality basically means not harming others, developing virtuous practices, and benefiting others. In other words, not doing anything that's negative, doing everything that is positive, and then helping other sentient beings. If you do that, that is practice of morality. Now, if you are somebody who has been doing all the good things and refraining from all the bad things and helping other sentient beings, you have nothing to regret. Nothing to regret. When you have nothing to regret, when you lead a sincere life with integrity, then your mind will remain cool, right? When your mind is cool, then you can meditate. Then you can analyze. Whatever you want to do, you can do. Imagine if your mind is full of anger or full of attachment. How can you meditate? How can you analyze? Right? So therefore, it is important to lead a life. So therefore, after touching on this topic of morality, the next sentence the text says is, whatever you do, it should be virtuous. Whatever you do, you can make whatever you do virtuous through your motivation, through the wish to help other sentient beings, through the wish not to harm other sentient beings, through the wish to attain nirvana, through the wish to achieve enlightenment. It will become, even when you sleep, just before sleeping, develop this pure motivation, then whole night it will become virtuous practice. Even when you're eating food, then offer that food to all the insects or viruses or bacteria, whatever is inside your body. And many teachers in the past do this. Right now I am feeding you, and next life I will feed you with Dharma teachings, things like that. Right? So even when you go to the toilet and clean yourself, that also you offer it to many other spirits for whom it will become a food, you see. So whatever you do, physically, verbally, mentally, as much as possible. Of course, you cannot become 100% perfect in one day, but if you try that, then gradually, whatever you do will become meaningful and virtuous, right? So therefore, through this threefold practice of morality, you can do that. And then after that, of course, you need to, to uproot that negative emotion. The root cause, of course, is ignorance. For that, you need that profound teaching. That means the profound teaching on shunyata. And that understanding of the profound teaching must be coupled, must be united by a kind mind. Kind mind. As I had mentioned earlier, that the Buddha himself has clearly said that if you have one practice in the palm of your hand, or one quality in the palm of your hand, you have all the qualities in the palm of your hand. And what is that quality? Great compassion. I mean, so powerful. And I mentioned this earlier. Compassion means the wish to remove sufferings of all sentient beings. If you honestly, sincerely have this wish to remove sufferings of all sentient beings, how can you harm other sentient beings? How can you exploit them? How can you cheat them? How can you lead a life of duplicity towards them? How can you directly, indirectly harm them? It's impossible. So even if you have one quality, like great compassion, all other practices will come, right? So therefore, great teachers like Atisha, as I told you earlier, some of you may not have heard, that whenever he meets a person, instead of saying hello or how are you, I mean, which is, I think, quite similar, he used to say, have you had a good mind? Have you had a good mind? Have you had a good mind? And His Holiness Dalai Lama, I found in the conclusion of all of his talks, he would normally say, have a good mind and relax in peace. That's what he always said. Have a good mind and relax in peace. So that is the almost like summary of Buddhist practice. Now again, the important thing for us to know is you will not become a person with good mind just because you want to become a person with good mind. It's not that easy. So therefore, the Buddha, one of the almost like summary of Buddhist ethics, the one verse that the Buddha taught. Some scholars say that this is really the verse from where the Buddhist ethics started. And that verse is, do not do anything that is negative, do everything that is positive, completely discipline your mind. That's my teaching. Right? So he's saying, do not do anything that is negative, do everything that is positive. Right? And if he says only these two lines and stops there, then it looks like easy. Don't do anything that's negative, do everything that is positive. But he makes a third line statement where he says, completely discipline your mind. Not do anything that's negative, do everything that is positive. It's not easy. For that, you need training of your mind. Completely train your mind, discipline your mind. And this is my teaching. So again, it's a question of training your mind, because there are many things, good things that we don't know it is good. There are many bad things we don't know it is bad, especially the subtle level we don't know. So therefore, we need to study and train our mind. And then the process of training basically is summarized in the practice of the three precepts, as I briefly mentioned: training of morality, training of one point in meditation, and training of wisdom, right? Training of wisdom. So these three also represents the core of the Buddha's teaching, right? And my teacher used to say that morality is like your body being healthy. And one point in meditation is, for example, if you want to cut a tree, then your overall, physical body should be strong. Second, the arm which picks up the axe to cut the tree, that should also be strong. If your overall body is quite good, but this arm is like damaged or not weak, very weak and not strong, then you can't use that axe. So the arm which picks up the axe must be strong. And then the axe which actually hits at the tree must be sharp. If it is blunt, doesn't matter how many times you strike at the tree, you will not be able to cut it, right? So the axe must be sharp. So therefore, the physical body is like the morality. And then the strong arm, steady arm means when you cut the tree. I have that experience. I'm sure many of you have this experience. When your arm, even if it is not diseased, but if it is not very strong and not very steady, then when you cut the tree, you sometimes strike it up, sometimes strike it down, you just waste a lot of wood and you will not be able to cut it easily, see. But those people who have a strong, steady arm, they'll just hit at the needed point and then easily cut the tree. I have that experience, right? So therefore, the arm which cuts the tree must be steady. The mind which engages in practice must be able to concentrate. concentration is the source of success both in war and in peace, as somebody said. I mean, this is absolutely true. And elsewhere, they say concentration is like a laser beam. If the rays of the laser beam are scattered, it doesn't have that capacity to cut through the steel. But if the rays or the light of the laser beam are concentrated, it can easily cut the steel. So concentration is really important. And then the wisdom that analyzes the object, its ultimate reality, its conventional truth, its ultimate truth, its long-term benefit, whatever, you analyze. It's extremely important. So these three are another important set of practice. And then, as right in the beginning we mentioned, for those of us who follow this Kadamba tradition, we should rely on this Kadam Lachu Dundi, that means 4 deities and 3 dharmas. The 3 dharmas, the 3 pitakas, and then the 4 deities, as I mentioned earlier, the Buddha, Achala, Aryatara, Avalokiteshvara, right? And then especially because your job is to cut, not only to prune. Just like, for example, if you want to cut a tree, then you have to cut it from the root. If you want to completely do away with that, it's not enough just to do some pruning and remove some leaves and things like that. So in order to cut the root of cycle existence, cut the root of all the negative emotions, you must hear, think, meditate persistently, relentlessly on both the profound teaching and the vast teaching. Vast teaching refers to the stages of the path, right from finding a great teacher and then the rest of the path, right? Systematic. Systematic is very important because many of these stages of the path practices are titled, the title itself is called Stages of the Path. Similarly, we have Kamalashila's Stages of Meditation. This is very, very important because it's actually, I think, a law of nature that you need to achieve success gradually, stage by stage. There is no push button enlightenment. Although we wish that, especially in the modern time, we have this addiction to the modern technology, and we use many of the so-called automatic machines. So we wish that the long-term happiness and peace also come with the touch of a button or quickly. But if you look at the nature, how trees grow. You plant a small seed and then you wait and then the seedlings come for sprouts come forth and then it becomes bigger and bigger. It takes a lot of time. Even when you construct a house, you need to make the ground floor and then the first floor and second floor. Even when you move into that building, you need to, go step by step. Even when you go in a lift, still it is, stage by stage. You cannot right away on the first stage or first, the last floor or whatever, you see. So therefore, you need to, especially in our mind, because our mind is not used with this many of these spiritual practices, so it should be trained. Just as a student cannot, without studying ABCD, cannot do the PhD course, right? So similarly, we need to start from the beginning and then gradually train our mind. And then, of course, while you do that, you should especially pay attention to the profound teaching, which is actually the wisdom understanding shunyata, which actually is the direct antidote to removing the root of negative emotion. So that must be there. Now, when you do this kind of practices, then as we discussed already, you need this commitment. And one of the main hurdle is laziness. Laziness. Now, laziness means not just not doing things as we normally understand. It is much more than that. Not doing things is also a laziness, as we normally understand. But then there is also laziness or procrastination. Yes, I have to do it, but I'll do it tomorrow. but I'll do it next year. Right now I'm busy, I'll make some money. Right, when I have made enough money, then I'll do some Dharma practice. Right now I have to go to a movie, so tomorrow I'll practice. Today it's Sunday, I also need to enjoy. Next day I'll do it. So in this way, you keep on postponing, you see, postponing, and you almost treat it as a less important thing. The very reason you are postponing means it is not urgent. It's not very important. You have that mentality. So you keep on postponing, right? So that is also laziness. The third kind of laziness, which is called uh, laziness, which comes by uh, belittling oneself. Yes, this is important, this must be done, but I'm not intelligent, I don't have the time, I don't have knowledge, I can't do. So you look down upon yourself, you belittle yourself, and you don't make that effort, right? So it's important to make that effort. Even if you can't read, you can listen to the teaching, you can listen to the translation, there's so many ways to learn these things, right? And there is nothing in the world which will not become easy if you get familiar with it. Right from your kindergarten studies to PhD, how much progress you have already made. And especially in your life, if you see, very often you when you get some setbacks and then start thinking, I can't do, then you should see how far you have come, how many things you have already achieved in many fields. So from that, you should get the inspiration. Since I've reached up to this stage, facing all these problems, all these difficulties, why I can't do this one also? And then you should have that interest, liking, delight, right? Then it becomes easy. That's important. That's important, right? And there is another kind of laziness, which is laziness of getting attached to less important things, right? Which is a little bit similar to what I already explained. But if you see other activities of life more important than Dharma practice and get attracted to there, distracted to there, that's also laziness. So there are many different kinds of lazinesses, right? So if you let yourself ruled by laziness, forget about Dharma practice, you are not going to get good food also. For example, if you are indolent and fond of sleeping, even washing your clothes, you keep on postponing it and keep all your clothes smelly and dirty, thinking I'll wash it tomorrow or next time. We do that all the time, you see. So which is not good, which is not good. So laziness is a big hurdle. Laziness is different from resting. Yes, there are occasions when you are tired, you need rest. That's one thing. But laziness is really a big obstruction. Okay. And then also, if you see carefully, the more you remain lazy and keep on sleeping, then the mind also become more sluggish gradually and will become less clear. Gradually, the clarity of the mind will be lost. It is probably the nature of the brain or nature of our human cells. The more you remain active, the more they fed with the needed energy, and thereby your mind remains sharp and your cells also become active and things like that. And that laziness also comes because of your having not understood the nature of reality properly, right? For example, with your life, you might start thinking, yes, it is important to do Dharma practice, but I will do it later on. I will do it next year, as I said earlier. Why you are having this kind of perception? You are having this kind of perception because you have this grasping of permanence, thinking that I will be there next year. I'll be there next month. From where you got this confidence? From where you got this guarantee that you will be there in next month or next life or not next life, next month or next year or things like that. I mean, during the COVID-19 experience, how many people lost their life? You see, they may also have been planning like us to live long life. but they're all gone. So many people have already died. I'm talking about only the COVID-19 patients. Many other people who are suffering from many other diseases, they are gone. So therefore, you should realize that next life and tomorrow, which will come first, nobody knows. Next life and tomorrow, which will come first, nobody knows. Right? So therefore, start now for the so-called future lives, which may come tomorrow. And if you die unprepared, thinking that you will live for a long, long life, then it's like your flight time has come, but you have not booked your ticket. And you have nobody receiving you at the airport on the other side of the country or things like that, right? So it's important to start as much as possible right now. Because as we discussed earlier, death is definite. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know. Death is definite. The time of death, unfortunately, is not definite. Death is definite, but the time of death is indefinite. It can come anytime. It can strike us at any time. And at the time of the death, the only thing that is going to help you is your spiritual practice. Not your money, not your relatives and friends, and not anything that you possess. It's only your spiritual practice. Spiritual practice means if you had lived a life where you have made your mind habituated with the positive ways of life, positive ways of thinking, if you have had formed that positive habit, that habit will continue. That's how you are going to help yourself, right? So therefore, as I mentioned earlier also, when we talk about doing Dharma practice, then you must involve your mental consciousness, and if possible, the subtle mental consciousness, because it is the subtle mental consciousness which goes to the next life, not any of your sense consciousnesses. Because the sense consciousnesses disappear with the disappearance of the senses. So what goes to the next life is mental consciousness in general, and especially the very subtle mental consciousness. So that's why we need to do meditation using this mental consciousness, at least, if possible, the very subtle mental consciousness, whose technique is taught in tantric practices. So that is important. That's important. So therefore, meditate on impermanence and try to remove or lessen this grasping to permanence. Grasping in general, and especially grasping to permanence. And here the teachers, they are saying that in the past also, you did not fear the sufferings in the samsara. And therefore you continued to develop negative emotions and contaminated actions. So the result is what we are experiencing today. Still an ordinary person with the negative emotions, with the sufferings. Now compare this with the Buddha, the enlightened Buddha, who saw the defects of ignorance, who saw the defects of self-cherishing attitude, and engaged very rigorously in the practice of this positive attitude. So where is Buddha and where are we today? So that is the difference between the practice of self-cherishing attitude and the practice of bodhicitta. The practice of wisdom, understanding emptiness, and the practice of grasping and seeing things as having inherent independent existence. So therefore, the masters here are repeatedly saying, it is not enough just to chop some branches and leaves, but cut the root of that poisonous tree. Now, in order to do that, you need to do the practice in accordance with the lamrim or stage by stage practice. So doing that practice, one of the most important thing is be careful about what kind of action you are taking. All your activities, physical, verbal, mental, must be positive. Even if it is a minor thing. If it is a negative, minor action, don't say it will be okay because it's not a big thing. It's a minor negative action. Even that minor negative action will harm you. Just like when a small particle goes into your eye, no one will say, oh, it's a small particle, no problem. Let that small particle enter into my eye because it will create a lot of problem in your eye. So similarly, beware of committing even a minor, small negative emotion. Try to eliminate that, abandon that. Because if you look at the nature of these negative emotions or positive emotions, whatever actions you do, their fruit never get wasted or lost. It's not like escaping the police. If you commit some minor crime and then if you be very clever, you might be able to fool the police. But in the case of committing the negative emotions, it is said that you cannot fool. It's natural process of the law of nature. A very concrete example that is given is the bird and the shadow. Whenever the bird flies, the shadow accompanies that bird. Even when the birds fly very high, you don't see the shadow on the ground, and you might think, okay, now there's no shadow. But as and when the bird alights and comes closer to the ground, again you will see the shadow coming. So it means the shadow has been with the bird wherever it was moving. So we cannot cheat the law of karma. There's nobody somewhere there, waiting for you to give you the punishment and the reward. But whatever action you do, consequences you have to experience. For example, if you sow the seed of a rice, you will get a rice crop, not a mango or some other thing. You see, it's a law of nature. It's law of nature, right? And the very, very Buddhist teaching is in accordance with the law of nature. The foundation of the Buddhist teaching is true truth, which is law of nature, the conventional truth and ultimate truth. It's not made by Buddha. It was there. Buddha only discovered it and explained it. It's law of nature, right? And then based on that law of nature, the true truth, Buddha taught a system of developing the good heart and the wisdom, and through which you will get enlightened, right? So therefore, it is important to engage in systematic practice in accordance with the stages of the path, and especially focus on the law of karma, infallibility of the law of karma. And if you have not committed an action, positive or negative, you don't have to experience its fruit. You will not experience the fruit, right? And then even if it is a small negative action, its fruit may be big. Like when you sow a small seed, the seed itself is very small, but from that very small seed, a huge tree can grow. That is the situation in the external world. And it said the seed planted in the mind can grow a fruit which is much, much, much bigger than what we see in the external physical world. And then the actions that you commit is also very progressive, meaning that they multiply very fast, right? So therefore, you need to develop this conviction to the infallibility of the law of causality, and then meditate on the shunyata, having no inherent independent existence. Now, when we talk about meditating on shunyata or having no independent existence, that does not mean things do not exist. So this is a little bit difficult point. You need to make a clear distinction between independent existence and existence. Independent existence is there, independent existence is not there, but existence is there. Things exist, but things do not exist independently, because the existence is dependent on many causes and conditions and the mind that gives the designation and so forth. Therefore, we say things do not exist independently. Why we need to know this? We need to know this because we don't only see things existing, but we tend to see it existing independently, especially when we fancy that particular object or when we do not like that particular object. For example, if you fancy that particular object, then you not only see this object as good, but very good, absolutely good, good from its own side. It is through this way that you get obsessed with that object and negative emotions like attachment arise. Contrarily, if you do not like somebody, you will not only see that person as horrible or negative, but you'll see that person as absolutely incorrigible, absolutely negative, destructive. That's what we see. What we say normally is such a bad person, mean person. I don't want to see his face. I don't want to talk to him. Right? So that's not absolutely true. That person may have some negative aspect, but it is wrong to say that he is incorrigible and 100% negative, because that person also has Buddha nature. So therefore, it's because of this, dividing everything in black and white, not finding a middle way, we make problems. Either we say things exist independently, that is the extreme of permanence, or we will say if things do not exist independently, they should not exist at all. And in this way, we fall into the extreme of nihilism. That's why Buddha taught the middle way. The middle way is things exist, but they don't exist independently. The purpose of this teaching is if you are able to see things as existing, not existing independently, thereby things are like the dream or an illusion, then there's no point to develop too much grasping to someone and too much disliking to others. Just like the movies that you see on the television screen, however attractive or however destructive that particular hero or heroine on the screen, there's no point developing too much attraction to one and disliking to other, because this is just on the screen. So life is like that. When you're able to see things do not exist independently, but things exist, it means they just come and go. When the causes and conditions come together, they appear and then disappear. That's the meaning of impermanence. That is meaning of having no independent existence. So where is the point? Where is the purpose to develop any grasping to anybody or too much disliking to anybody? Right? As the Buddha said, you cannot walk into the same water twice. Right? So with our meeting with the people also, you can't meet that person twice. When you see in that momentarily changing, nature. But when we are unable to see it, then we see this person, the same person I met last year, the same person I met 10 years back. So he is that horrible person I met 10 years back. And you maintain that grudge even after 10 years, seeing that person is permanent, independent, right? So that's the problem. We get stuck. As I explained the last time, when you understand this nature of shunyata, then it's really like talking about the space. The space provides opportunity for everything to grow. to come into existence, does not obstruct anybody. Contrarily, if you see things as having independent existence, not in terms of emptiness, but in terms of having independent existence, then everything, it's concrete, obstructive, divisive. So there's the beauty of this teaching, you see. Emptiness. That's why when Buddha was asked to explain emptiness, he said the best example is space. Right? So that's what he's saying. So what he was really saying was, when we talk about emptiness, we are not talking about nothingness. Emptiness means empty of independent existence. That does not mean things do not exist. Things exist. Therefore, things function. Therefore, it is right to do positive things, wrong to do negative things. Therefore, it is better to go to heaven than go to hell. so it's not saying that it's emptiness, doesn't matter, Of course, there is a statement by saying that from the parlance of having no independent existence, nirvana the heaven and hell are same. That means in terms of their ultimate nature, they are same. Because both doesn't have independent inherent existence. But that doesn't mean they are basically same. So Buddhist teaching is not saying there's nothing good or bad, there's no suffering, no virtuous practice, no, nothing. It's not saying that. It means conventionally things are there. But if you look at the ultimate reality and try to, lay your hands upon something called having independent inherent existence, you will never find that. That's the point. That's the point. So that's why the whole phenomena has been explained in terms of dream, in terms of mirage, in terms of magician's creation and things like that. It's a wonderful teaching, And even in the case of our, forget about other phenomena, even in the case of your own body, we are seeing our body as something very concrete, something very obstructive. But when the same body is seen through a very powerful microscope, things like that, it will be just like a bubbling energy. Not so concrete, not so abstract as we are thinking, you see. So you need to have that wisdom eye to see the reality. So that's why Buddha compared this body as a bubble or as a foam or as a mirage and things like that. All right. So therefore, to conclude, the unity of appearance and emptiness must be understood. Unity of appearance and emptiness means things appear, things are there on the level of conventional truth, things function. But things do not exist as we think. They do not have independent existence. Therefore, they are empty of independent existence. So that is called unity of appearance and emptiness. In order to understand emptiness, there's no other way but to go through the conventional truth. Conventional truth is the means, and ultimate truth is what you get from that means. So that means when I talk about emptiness of this page, when I talk about emptiness of this page, I need to know that emptiness of the page only through by analyzing and studying this page. I analyze the nature of this page, and then I don't find any page here which has inherent independent existence, because the so-called page is made up of many materials. And apart from these materials, when you split this paper into different parts, you won't find anything called paper at the end of the analysis. Right? So therefore, conventional truth is the means, and ultimate truth is what you get from the means. And if you do not know this distinction, then you will fall into the prey of negative misconceptions. Right? So on the conventional level, you are very much there. You are listening to the teaching. I'm talking. But on the ultimate level, if you try to pinpoint where is this person who is speaking, you will not be, able to find a kind of ultimate thing saying that, okay, I found this is Geshe Lhakdor. Take his body away, take his mind away. What will you find? You will not find. You will not be able to pinpoint something which you say this is the essence of that person. So that's what we are saying. But not being able to find through analysis doesn't mean things are not there. So things exist only by name, only by terms. So that is hard to grasp. This is the truth, but hard to grasp because we are so used with this concrete perception that you are a solid, physically existent person there. I'm a solid, physically existent person. We are so used with this solid, concrete thing that it frightens our, it kind of frightens us when we talk about the essencelessness of that person when analyzed, right? But actually, the interesting thing is, the Buddhists, they say the more you understand the essencelessness of a thing, the more you get that freedom. So it almost looks like we are fond of getting stuck with the concrete things, not the space. And emptiness is, as I said, like a space. When the space is all yours, you can fly, right? So more or less, that is the subject matter of today's chapter. So I'll stop here. And if you have one or two questions, please ask.
Yes, so thank you so much, Kishila. We already have Natasha with her questions. Natasha, you can go ahead, please. I'll send you the request to unmute.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Geshe. We have 3 questions today. The first one, how to react to the beggars and people asking you for money if I'm not sure if they are not cheaters, because I kind of feel that I need to go money, but I doubt if people are cheaters or not. And the second part of the question is how to satisfy the material needs of others if the material resources are limited.
Good question. So that's why we have been talking about the need to use both the head and the heart. Your heart says that person looks like a beggar, she might be in need, I want to give. But then your head, the wisdom should analyze. In terms of practice of giving, it's clearly said, giving in general is good. Practice of generosity is good in general, but you need to know to whom to give, how to give, when to give, what is proper, what is improper. Just in the name of generosity and giving, if you give poison to somebody, it's not counted as a giving. It is killing somebody, destroying somebody's life. Right? Similarly, if somebody is like practicing, somebody is fasting, hungry but fasting, then if you give food, delicious cooked food, that person might lose his or her fasting. So you need to use your brain. Yes, you are right. There are many people who are cheaters. So therefore, in the name of practitioner, you cannot just say ha to everybody, and let yourself be fooled. That's why you need to use this wisdom all the time, right? So deep down, you should have love and compassion to everybody. But how to help, when to help, what is proper, what is improper, you need to use your wisdom, analyze it. Otherwise, there are many people who don't work and they cheat other people's money. And especially if you show the so-called compassion or things like that, they'll unfortunately see that as a weak sport, and they'll take advantage of you. I also have a little bit of that experience, you see. It happens, unfortunately. So that's why Buddha was not satisfied with the practice of giving alone. He spoke about 10 perfections, practice of 10 perfections. And especially he decided to become enlightened to help all of the sentient beings. He never said that I will remove the sufferings of all sentient beings by distributing money and wealth. No. So long as people's mind is full of negative emotions and things like that, it is not possible to help them completely. You can help them temporarily, right? So among people also, again, if you judge carefully, there may be some people, like for example, a student or somebody who is really, really hardworking, really, really honest, you know that person very well, and in need of money, certain money, for example, a school fee or college fee or things like that. And once that person gets it, he will not ask you more, but that will really, make him pass his university or college. So if things are clear like that, then it's wonderful to help, right? But if that person who is asking for help, there's no clarity and things like that, then of course you can give a lunch or dinner. There's no problem. You can give things like that, and then not make that person run after you, or not make that person dependent upon you. You should make it very clear. That's important, right? And then especially as the second part of your question, it's impossible to satisfy anybody with material gifts, right? And material gifts, you can never make anybody completely satisfied. As I cited this quotation, the king with all his kingdom remains hungry, and the beggar with just a begging stick, feels contented. It's your attitude, your wish. Just by having material things. If you have, like, if your salary today is 10,000 rupees, tomorrow you want 20. If your money is raised to 20, you still think, oh, it's not much, I need 30. If you get 30, then it's, oh, my peer is getting 40, I should get 40. It's endless. It's endless. And then on a bigger, perspective, the material resources of the world itself is by definition limited. So we cannot get unlimited material, things from limited resources. Impossible. Okay.
Thank you very much. And the second question is how to struggle against distractions and drowsiness while reading the texts. The language of philosophic texts can be very difficult. And sometimes the text itself, is very interesting. The subject for me is very interesting, but it is very difficult to read it.
So that is a problem that should be solved not just by you, but other translators and teachers. The teachers who should teach in a language that other people are able to understand. So it is also the job of the teacher, and also the translators who translate the text. So the important thing is see all this Buddha's teaching as a, as a usual human conversation, right? Not like some hidden kind of secret language which is difficult to understand. It's not composed in that way. And then from your own side, certain terms and other things, if you are not clear, you need to ask people. You need to ask people. And luckily these days, you know, so many things you can download. So if one particular translation is not clear, there may be another versions, another translations, read that because of the differences in terms of process of translation and also differences of the caliber and the knowledge of the translator. They might put the same thing in different languages. So it is important to do that, right? Okay.
Okay, and the last question is from a gentleman by name Oleg. He says, Geshe-la, while I'm listening to you, I have a growing desire to just withdraw from the fuss of this world and go to the retreat.
Yeah.
So what do you feel about this effect of your words on me?
It's good that my words are having some effect, but don't get excited with everything. You know, I'll tell you this story. I think I told you this story, you know, during Milarepa's time, because Milarepa was somebody who has renounced everything. So there was this guy who was admiring Milarepa's renunciation, practice of renunciation. And he said, I also want to become like Milarepa. And overnight, he threw all his belongings. It's easy to throw away the belongings, but it's not easy to develop your, to sever the tie with your mundane things or do away with your desire, attachment, and so forth. So this person, not like Milarepa, still has this obsession to material things. So he quickly, out of excitement, threw away all his possessions and belongings. So after a couple of days, he started suffering because he's used with all these belongings and possessions. So then instead of admiring Milarepa, he said, it is Milarepa who made me a beggar. You see, so you might say, oh, it's Geshe Lhakdor who made me a beggar later on, right? So I appreciate that you're, you know, enjoying some of my talks. But what is important, I would suggest is, as His Holiness the Dalai Lama suggested, His Holiness normally suggests for ordinary people like us, it should be 50-50. 50% for this life, 50% for afterlife, or 50% for oneself, 50% for other people. So do retreat, study, meditate as much as possible. But also, so long as you have this stomach, you need food, you have this body, you need clothing, you know. So for this also you need to work. But if you're somebody lucky who has all these facilities, then of course you can devote your time for spiritual practice. So it depends what kind of your situation is.
Thank you very much, Geshe-la. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah,
Hello.
Thank you,
Hi.
Geshe-la. Thank you, Natasha. Jackie, you can
Thank you
ask
for
your
your
question.
sorry. Thank you for your question. For your teaching. I was wondering. I still have problems meditating because I get distracted still when I sit on a cushion and try and do single pointed meditation. Does that mean, because you mentioned earlier about needing integrity to be able to have a cool mind when you meditate, the fact that I'm distracted, does that mean that I'm missing out on some morality? Because sometimes it's hard to decide what's wrong with you because you're analyzing from your own side. So it's good if I have hints on if something, if it's because.
as I said earlier, that there is no push button enlightenment. Nobody becomes, perfect at one go. All meditators, I would say, they get distracted. But the fact that you are aware of that distraction is also a good progress. Ordinarily, we don't even know we are distracted, right?
Yeah, I know.
So let me tell you this story. I think I told you this story maybe before. I know one Western nun. She came to me one day and she said, Geshe-la, I've been practicing Buddhism for a number of years, not making any progress. What should I do? I said, go back to your country. So maybe, it's not just because I said, but she must be going back to her country. She went back to her country. I had no idea. So it happened that she went back to her country. And after several months, she came to see me and said, Geshe, thank you. Then I said, for what? The last time when I came to see you, when I told you that I'm not making much progress in my spiritual practice, you said, go back to your country. So it was kind of a little bit blunt. But now I realize what you mean. So I said, what did you figure out? She said, when I went back to my country and met so many of these other people and their style of, work and their behavior, I found that I made so much progress. I was able to clearly see that people should not be doing this, should not be doing this. She even felt now I can advise them, I can teach them, you see. So that's the difference, you see. So it's important to realize the progresses that one has made, before you have started anything, right? Not only just your failings, but also your achievements, right? So sometimes when your spirit goes down, you need to uplift it. Sometimes when the spirit goes too high, you need to bring it a little bit down. So again, something like middle way. Okay.
Sorry, sorry to go on, but I also have a problem with just making plans for the future. Like when I'm meditating, I for some reason think of all the things I have to do. Is there something like with this obsession with the future and plans? Do you suggest meditating
I can't. Your voice is a little bit breaking. I can't hear properly.
I have problems with planning. Like when I'm meditating, I seem to plan for the future, and I'm like that's just my little thing that I do. To be able to remove this obsession with plans for the future, do you have suggestions? Like should I meditate on impermanence or?
Plan, like your spiritual practice itself is planning for your future lives. That itself is planning for your future life. And this spiritual planning is not like financial planning, that after 3 years you're going to make this building. It's not like that. The fact that you are transforming and changing your mind and getting your mind habituated with positive practices, that itself is the planning. And the road map is very clear, with this whole Lamrim is the road map, how to start and until enlightenment, how to go. So that road map, you need to get a clear picture of that road map and get familiar with all those, guidelines. And by the way, Jackie has written a very beautiful poem on Lamrim. Very nice. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh yeah, that Zoom. Oh yeah, Zoom.
Can't hear you, Northern.
So sorry, I blabbered a lot. You missed a lot. Just kidding. Thank you so much, Kishla. Really, I said Sonam Sakso. In we say Dhanya ho gaye. I don't know how good a translation it is, but it's very close, right, Kishla? We are listening to you, and we cannot even try time. Thank you so much, Kishla. See you next week, and see you next week, everyone. Please be there.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Thank you, Geshe. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody. Be safe.
Keep your blessings flowing.
Thank you.